First thing I want to show you is how to download something properly. I messed up last time. I was trying to get y'all to download it the hard way. I set up Moodle so that it'll automatically download for you. All you've got to do is click once. First thing I do want to show you is remember all of your programs that we're going to be using will be down here at the very bottom. This is called your dock, and to pull it up, all I did was pull my mouse down to the bottom and you see it pops up. Some of the computers may have Firefox as your web browser, some may have Safari as your web browser. Maybe even a few have Google Chrome, most of them shouldn't. But they all do the same thing. They allow you to get on the internet, and y'all have probably at least gotten on the internet at least once. However, downloading is going to be a little bit different for both of them. So I'm going to show you both ways of downloading. Oh, and I got a new update to install. If for whatever reason these little icons pop up, just hit restart later or close it out. We won't worry about those. So I've logged into our Moodle page. One thing you'll need to do is to scroll down. Here's Project 1 PDF, and here's the file that goes along with it. Right now, what program am I in? Can somebody tell me? Can y'all see? Would you know?
Safari?
Safari. How do you know I'm in Safari?
It has an Apple logo to it.
Yep. Right up here next to the Apple logo. So this is very important. To know what program you're in, look at the very top left-hand side. So if you see Safari, you know you're in Safari. Watch what happens if I click on my desktop. See how it switched over to Finder? Finder is kind of Apple's mainframe program. So Safari's still up. I'm just not had it active. So click on it. You can see now I'm active back in Safari. Here's how to download something from Safari. I'm going to download the PDF. Just clicking once. Whoop, you saw the little circle go down? What that did was it told me it downloaded to my Downloads folder. Now I'm down here at the bottom. There's a couple little folders off here at the side. Here's my Downloads folder. If I scroll over it, I can click on it, and everything that's inside of the folder will open up. All I did was click once. Did I lose everybody? Real different. If I click on it again, you can see it automatically opened up. Hey, what program did the PDF open up in? Acrobat Pro. Acrobat Pro is our PDF reader. And so this is the program. You can scroll down and see all the different pages for this particular project. Actually, I can click on here and scroll down. Notice how the project's laid out. Like I said, it's all step by step. Anything that you do in the bold is what you need to do, and it'll give you some pictures to look at so you know exactly what to do. If you want to make this bigger, usually at the bottom right-hand corner of any type of window, you can click and drag and make it much larger. So that's a little bit easier for me to read. And I can still scroll down and work through here. Make sense? All cool? So that's downloading from Safari. If I need to close this out, I'm just going to click on my red X up here at the top. If I wanted to download from Firefox, now I've already logged in Firefox. Remember, Firefox is another web browser here at the bottom. I'm going to go all the way over here to my far end. Here's my Firefox window that I had open. I'm going to click on it. What that did was it docked this window into my dock, and it kind of just gets things out of the way. If you find that you've got a lot of windows open and you're having to move things around, notice that I can click on the top side. Click on the yellow button, and it will genie itself down into the dock. Clicking on it again will pick it back up. All cool? There's how I did that. Here's how to download from Firefox. So I've got Project 1. I'm going to download the symbols. Click once. This time, notice what pops up. It's going to prompt me, hey, what do you want to do with this file? It doesn't just download it automatically. It's going to ask, do I want to open it or do I want to save it? I'm just going to go ahead and save it. Say OK. Another window pops up. Now this is really important. You're going to get these windows when we start working in Illustrator 2. This one will allow me to save it as a specific name and save it to a specific place. On the left-hand side, these are some very quick links to different places. Here's my desktop. Here's my documents folder. Here's my jump drive, Mr. Ivy's jump drive. So if I wanted to save this, let's save it to the desktop. I've got this clicked, or if I chose jump drive, you can see it'll open up all that's in there. Let's choose desktop. You can see I've got different folders on my desktop. Here's Mr. Ivy's Do Not Erase file. When I click on it, it'll open up kind of a tree structure from there. So if I hit save, I get a little arrow, and I can click on here, and I can see that it's been downloaded as well. But let's go and find it. I'm going to minimize this. Yellow button. Let's minimize this one too. Yellow button again. Remember, on my desktop, there should be a folder. Here's Mr. Ivy's folder. Big Do Not Erase. Double click to open. And in here, there should be that zip file. Do y'all remember what it was called? Symbols. All of these are in alphabetical order, so it's probably down here. There it is. Symbols print 1 PDF, or a zip file. I can move it out of the file. Let's put it on my desktop. And there it is there. Since it's a zip file, this means that it's a folder that's been compressed. It's a folder that contains a lot of different things. And if I double click on it, try to open it up, here's what's going to happen. It's going to unlock it and create the symbols folder. Now inside the symbols folder, I can find all of the files that are associated with it. And this is what we're going to use for our first project. Your first project, you're going to recreate these symbols. And we're going to do it by using some of the basic vector tools for Adobe Illustrator. Have I lost anybody? Need to show you anything else? Real simple from there. Here's another cool tip to know. If I wanted to see what it looked like, if I wanted to open up the file without actually having to fully open it, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on, say, the fire logo. If I hit my spacebar, it'll pop up and give me a little preview of what it looks like. Hit the spacebar again and it'll go down. Let's try a bigger file. I'm going to go in here. So if I have something that I don't know, like I don't know what that one looks like, 33 by 88. If I hit my spacebar, it'll pop up and give me kind of a preview of what it will look like. So that's kind of a quick, easy thing you can do to read and find out what it is. Pretty cool? Okay, let's close this out. All right, I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator. Now I've already opened it up, and so you're not going to see the launch page that I had. But to activate Illustrator, you saw that I clicked on the icon down in the dock. When you first open up Illustrator, you should be welcomed by what's called the welcome screen. Sometimes you can turn this off. The welcome screen is just one quick way of making new documents. I can make new documents for printing, for the web, for film and television, these kinds of things. As a graphic designer, one of the things you got to keep in mind is what your document is going to be used for. If I'm sending something to a printer, then printers use a certain type of colors that your monitor, your computer screen will use that's going to be a little bit different. Later on, when we start printing things, I'll go into a little more specifics about this. If for some reason you don't see this welcome screen, say I accidentally closed it out, here's another way you can make a new document. Always under the File menu, it drops down, I can go to New, and this should bring up our New Document dialog box. The dialog boxes, this is where you can customize the size of your artboards or the size of the document you need to work in. What's a standard size for a piece of paper? What's the height and width of a letter size piece of paper? Do y'all know? 8.5 by 11. Okay. Well, mine are called artboards. I'm just going to keep this at 1. My size is set to letter size, but check out my height and width. These aren't in inches. Right now they're measuring in points. My units, that's a common unit of measure, mostly for type or for lines. If I wanted to change my unit of measure from points to inches, click on that, and now you can see it's automatically saved from there. Pretty cool? We'll keep everything else the same from here and say OK. And here it'll open up my new document. So let me give you a tour of Adobe Illustrator. Actually, this will be the same for all of the Adobe software we use. They look very, very similar. They do some different things, and some of the tools will be in different places. First of all, what you're seeing in front of you is called your artboard. The area that's white, that's the area that's going to print. So whenever you create something and you want to be able to print it or see it or save it, make sure it's inside the white area. The area that's outside of it, it's also your artboard, but nothing, you can create things and put stuff out here, but nothing will print or save, well, it'll save, nothing will print from there. So for instance, I can make a rectangle, and I can place it out here, or I can move it into there. Which area is going to print? The area that's inside the white. If I do this, it'll only print that half. That's kind of the first easy thing to remember. All of your tools are going to be found over here in your toolbox, and I can click and drag that. If you see a little arrow, you can also collapse it or expand it. I kind of like keeping mine like this, so you'll see mine like this. All the tools we'll use will be in your toolbox. If you ever see a tool that's got a little arrow down at the very bottom left or right-hand side, if you click and hold on that tool, watch what happens. Click and hold, I get a pop-out. And I got more tools that are associated with it. So not only can I create straight lines, I can do arcs and spirals and different things. Same way for my shapes tool. We'll get into this one. I've got different kinds of shapes I can create, different kind of drawing tools. For this class, we're not going to use every single tool, but I will show you the basics, all the main ones that you most commonly use for this. At the very top, these are your tool options. Now these are going to change based on the kind of tool you have selected and how you're working. Right now I've got a shape selected, so if I wanted to change the color of this, I can change the fill color up here or the stroke color, and now when I make a rectangle you can see it's going to be different. I can change the size of it up there as well. All of these are the options that are associated with that tool. If I choose another tool, let's see if I can get it to change. Some will change more than others. Well, oh, I know, I've got something selected. Let's deselect. Most of these will be exactly the same, but it'll depend on what kind of tool or object you have selected. Above here, these are your window drop-down windows. Some of these will be used more than others as well. The final thing to know, whenever I ask you to open up a palette, the palettes are usually on your right-hand side over here. Palettes give you more customization to whatever you're creating. So if I wanted to choose a specific color, I can go over here and choose, that particular shade of blue or purple. If I wanted to change different swatches or brushes, more options for my stroke, I can do this. Here's the thing to remember about palettes. Watch how I can move these around. If I wanted to pull color over here, I can undock it from over here. If I wanted more options, see how that kind of minimized there? If I double click on color, it'll close it up more. Double click again, it'll give me more options. The main thing to remember about this, if the instructions say to open your color palette and you don't see exactly the same way, simply double click on the name and that will cycle through and give you some more options. If I wanted to add another, let's put color themes, I can dock this below here. That'll snap on to the bottom of this. Now they're both snapped together. Illustrator is a very customizable work area. If you're a professional, you want to be able to customize your tools and do a lot more with it. So this is one way you can customize your palettes and move things around and make your work area look and feel a lot better from that. There's more stroke options. How did I get the more stroke options? What did I do? Double click on it. That's how I got that. If I want to put them back over here, simply click and drag and you can see it'll highlight and put itself to there. You can see there's a lot of palettes that you can open up, and this is one reason why you want to minimize and move things out of the way. Some I'll use more than others. Some I've actually never used in my entire career. Final thing to know about the work environment. If for whatever reason you don't see a palette over here, or let's say you've accidentally closed out your stroke palette and you need to open it up, here's where you can find every single palette. Under your window drop-down menu. The actions, the align, the appearances, there's my color palette, there's my layers. All of these are different palettes that you can open up. If there's a checkbox or a check next to it, that means your palette's already open. So I should be able to find my libraries already open. If I don't see it, if it doesn't have a check, so let's open up my color, click on it, now my color has been opened up from there. If you accidentally close out your tools, I can go to Window, and here's my tools. Oh, there it is, up at the top. They moved it. Here's my tools. I can reopen from this one. So your windows, as far as your drop down, this is a very important one to know for finding your palettes, and the file is also very important to know for creating, and also later we'll save our objects as well. Any questions on that? That's my quick flyover and working in the environment. You're going to get to use this an awful lot. So that'll be the last thing, or the next thing that we'll do. So let's talk about what makes something a vector object. You've seen me make like a square, or if I chose another shape, I can click and drag and make these shapes. I can make lines, and all I'm doing is clicking and dragging my mouse to create these things. Vector objects, on the other hand, are very, very unique kind of objects you can work with. They use math in order to create the different shapes. So let's go back to math class. What does it take to make a line? What do you need?
2 points.
2 points. You need at least 2 points to draw a line. So if I had a point here and a point here, I can draw a line between those two things. So if I needed to move the line, all I have to do is change starting point and stopping point, and I can do that. So if I needed to build a shape like a square, how many points do I need for a square?
4.
At least 4. So now I've got a shape. If I want to transform, if I wanted to rotate something, change the size of it, change any point on it, all I've got to be able to do is change the starting and stopping points of that particular object, and the computer does the rest of the work for me. Now, there's an advantage to working with this. Y'all have heard of pixels, right? Y'all know what pixels are? It's the basic unit of a screen, especially when you print something. If I'm a computer and I've got to render this line, I've got to draw every single pixel from here all the way over to here. Now, that's going to be a lot of pixels, especially if it's a thick line and it's a really, really long line, right? But if I'm a computer, all I've really got to do is know the starting and stopping point, and it'll do the rest of the work for me. I don't have to remember every single pixel, right? Just 2 points and it does the same thing. This is the essence of what vector drawing does. So when we create these objects, what you're doing is you're essentially making all the little points, and you can kind of see the points. Actually, I'm going to choose my white arrow. For those of y'all who did the quiz, what's the white arrow called? Direct selection tool. I'll go into that. But you can see, here's a point right here at the edge. There's actually a middle point too. If I click on the circle is made up of 4 different points. If I click on my line, you can see there's an ending point and a starting point. And if I wanted to move the line, all I've got to do is change the starting and stopping point of each one of those. And that's how I can change up my vector objects. Now, when we get into Photoshop, you don't have vectors. You actually have all the pixels that you've got to create. So as far as the amount of memory it takes, which do you think is going to have larger files? A Photoshop file or a vector file?
Photoshop.
Why Photoshop?
It involves more information.
More information. Photoshop has to remember all the pixels, and so these are like huge files. Illustrator files tend to be a lot smaller. You can do some complex stuff with them, but they tend to be a lot smaller simply because you're working with those. Pretty cool? Okay, let me show you the next one. So this is really easy if I've got straight lines. Just go from one point to the other. What about curved lines? How can we make a curved line out of here? If I select my circle, I've got my white arrow, my direct selection. I can move this around. Watch what happens when I click on this particular point. I get these extra little handles off to the side. These handles are called Bezier handles. French word. B-E-Z-I-E-R. Bezier. I think it was a French mathematician who came up with this concept, so they named it after him. Those little handles are what control the curvature of that particular line from one point to the next. So if I was to click on them, I can click and drag and make it curve up or down, left and right, back and forth. Pretty cool? Now, this is the one thing that if you've never worked with these, it's going to be the hardest thing to get. Now, I've done this for years, so I can second nature draw with these things. I do it a lot. But if this is the first time, take your time about learning these vector drawing. And I'll show you some tools on how to make it a lot simpler. But just keep in mind, if you ever have a straight line, you're dealing with just one particular point. But if you've got a curved line, what do all curved lines have to have?
points.
Multiple points, and what kind of handles are these?
Bezier.
Bezier handles. You got to have your Bezier handles to work with those. Cool? Okay. A little bit more on the selection tools. So I've got my black arrow. If I choose my black arrow, this is my regular selection tool. I can click on an object and, of course, move it around. I've got a bounding box that goes around it. And if I click on the outer bounding box, usually the corners or the edges, I can actually change the size of my object. Let's move these out of the way. If I wanted to rotate my object, watch what happens when I move my mouse just outside the edge. You see it change? See the rounded arrows? Now I can click and drag and actually rotate it to whatever degree that I need it to be. Remember, all I'm doing is changing these 4 points. The computer is doing the work for me. Same way for this one. I've got a bounding box, click and rotate, and create from there. The white arrow, on the other hand, allows me to select one object at one point at a time. Whereas the black arrow, I can select the entire object. The white arrow will let me click right on a point. I know there's a point there. Notice that it lights up whenever my mouse goes directly over it. When I click on it, all the others will remain the same, and those will stay right there. Pretty cool. If you need to erase something, it's simply a matter of selecting it. So I've clicked in the middle of here, hit your delete key, and it'll be gone. So if I needed to erase these lines, click on the line, you can delete those as well. Final thing about selection is if I want to select multiple objects. I've got my selector tool. I can click on one object, hold down your shift key. Y'all find your shift key on your keyboard. I like to use all the ones on the left-hand side. Holding shift will allow me to click on multiple objects, and you can see my bounding box is growing. Now I can click and drag, and I can actually scale, rotate, move, do whatever to those. And they're all affected at the same time. To deselect it, simply a matter of clicking off to an empty area. You can see it goes away. Pretty cool? So there's that. Let's get rid of these. Let's actually jump in and look at our project. I'll show you the first stages of the icons. Yeah, here we are. So this is what we're going to be setting up. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to set up a row and columns of different little rounded rectangles. You're also going to place all the little symbols inside of each one of these, and we're going to recreate the symbols. Some things to know about creating the rows and the columns of this one. So let's jump back. Here's another thing. I'll do this as well. See how I've got two documents set up? Here's my icons Illustrator file. Here's my new file that I created. They were both docked together. I can click right up here at the top, and it'll jump back to my new one. If I want to see them side by side, I can click and drag it off, and now I've got two different windows I can move from. That's another common thing that tends to come up. Let's create some rounded rectangles. Remember, I can find my Shapes tool right here. Here's my rectangle. Hey, even here's a rounded rectangle tool. The first thing to know is what your fill color and your stroke color are. And this is another common thing to keep in mind. Right now, what colors have I been working in? Pinks. By default, I like to keep them black and white. Then I can pick my color from here. Check out the very bottom left edge of here. This will, in one click, change my fill color to white and my stroke or my outline color to black. I can now click and drag and make a size however I want. Check out what I have next to my cursor. See the little W and the H? What do you think that means? The width and the height. If I needed to make something a specific width and a specific height, this is one way I can do it. I can click, I'm holding down my mouse and give it that way. When I release, there it is from here. Another way you can give a very specific width and a very specific height is I've got my rectangle tool selected. Just click once. Watch what happens when I click once. I clicked and dragged, sorry. Click once, bingo. This will give me a dialog box. Now I can type in a specific height and width. So if I needed a rectangle to be exactly 2 inches by 2 inches, when I say OK, there it created it from that. Real easy to do. Actually, all of your shapes tools can do the same thing. If I wanted an ellipse, I'm going to click once. I can type in a width and height for this one. Let's give it something different. Say a 5 by 3. Say OK. You can see I've got that. Some of the more complex ones, like your polygon and your star, will do more than just a height and a width, or some will have a radius and the number of sides. So in this case, if I needed it to have a radius of 6 inches and the number of sides to be 9 sides. What's a 9-sided polygon called?
Nonagon.
Awesome. You're the first person I've ever asked to know that. Cool. So there's your 9-sided nonagon. Let's erase that and get rid of that. So I've created my objects. Remember, I can move them around. I've got my selection tool and work with those. Let's delete that away. The next thing I can do is if I wanted to change the size or the color of the stroke, 2 places I can go. You can easily double click. I'm going to double click on the black stroke. That'll pick up my color picker. From here, I can choose whatever color I want. So let's make it blue. It's not enough to choose blue here. I've got to choose my saturation and lightness and darkness. So let's choose a really saturated blue. So there's my change. When I say OK, because I had it selected, it did change. It's really small to see. Let's make it bigger. Change your stroke size. What is strokes measured in? Points. I can click the up arrow. You can see it gets a lot thicker. I can choose some predefined widths, and there's that there as well. Later on, we'll get into the different profiles and those things as well. But this is the basics of working with that. I do have some predefined colors, and you can find these up here at the very top. These are my color swatches. So if I needed this to automatically be orange, I can click the down arrow here, choose orange, and now my fill color has been changed as well. Any questions on that? Okay, I was going to show you one last thing about colors. If you don't want to have any color at all, no fill color or no stroke color, there's actually a color you have to pick. And that's, I'm going to change my blue outline to no color. So I'm going to click down. This very first one, this is called your none or your null color. And it's indicated by a red slash through it. If I chose that, it completely gets rid of my outline that I have. Cool? Okay, so that's changing colors, selecting it. Notice you have to have it selected in order to affect it. This one didn't change, but this one changed because I had it selected. Now in your book, it's going to ask you to change the roundness of the edges. And this is new for this version of Illustrator. I've got some little dots right here at the corners of each side. If I click and drag, it'll automatically rotate in those corners. And so I'm rounding off that particular edge. When I let go, you can see the edge has been rounded as well. The fun thing about this is I can change the size of my height and width, and the roundness will stay the same as well. If I wanted to add the stroke back, I think we're going to add a black stroke around that. Let's make it a little bit bigger and work from there. Cool? So you're going to make a row of these. Last thing I'll show you is how to copy, paste, and save what we're working on. There's a couple of ways of copying and pasting something. I'm going to select this object. Find the Command key on your keyboard. It's right next to your spacebar. It's got a little flower deal next to it. Command C is for copy. Command V is for paste. If you're working in Windows, it's kind of the same thing. So Command C and V, sorry, my Southern is coming out. Copy and V, paste it on there, and there's another one. Command V again, and you got another one on there. If I selected all 3 of these, I can also go up to Edit, and here's Copy. There's my keyboard shortcut. Check that out on the right-hand side, Command C. And there's Paste, Command V. And I can copy and paste multiple ones of these. Pretty cool? I want to do you one better. I've got my Move tool selected. Y'all find the Option key on your keyboard. It's right next to Command. With these selected, and with my regular black arrow move, hold down Option. Watch my keyboard, my cursor, change. Do you see the double arrow? If I click and drag now, it'll automatically, very quickly, make a copy of multiple objects from this one. So y'all see a couple of different ways of making copies. What's my keyboard shortcut for making a copy? Control? No. Command. Command-C. Command for Macintosh. What's a quick way of making a copy? What tool do I need to have selected? Quick or regular selection tool. Yes. My black arrow. Hold down Command, or excuse me, Option. Click and drag that and work from there. And I can change these, drag them down. Now your book is going to do a little bit better job about how to put these into rows and columns. I'm going to let y'all work through this one. But here's the last thing I wanted to show you. How to save a file that you've created. To save something, go to File, and down to, since this is the first time, Save or Save As. Save As will make a copy of it. And your Save dialog box is going to come up. If you don't see anything down here, check out this little arrow right here. I think I showed you all a couple of them. Sometimes it'll look like this. All I did was click on the arrow. That expanded it out and opened it up. From here, let's find my folder or my jump drive. I'm going to save it to my jump drive, Mr. Ivy. Here it is here. I'm going to call this one Signs or Symbols. Let's do Symbols. Notice the file type that I have, .ai. What do you think that stands for? Adobe Illustrator. AI is your Illustrator file. Check out the format down here. Adobe Illustrator is usually what you'll save things as. I'll hit Save. Another dialog box is going to come up. Now this is very important. If you have an older version of Illustrator, or if you're working with somebody who does have an older version, like this is the brand spanking new version, this will allow you to save it as an older copy, CS6, Illustrator 10, so on and so forth. Otherwise, you can keep it exactly the same. When y'all save yours, go ahead and save it as like this. We're not going to make any other changes. We'll say OK. And you can see the name has changed as well. Question?
What version of Illustrator is on the computers in Avon?
That should be CC. Should be exactly the same. Yeah. Good question. Once this is done, I've got it saved. Everything is good. I'm going to close it out. And I'll even close out this one. I don't think I made any changes. Hey, if I did make changes, it's going to ask, do I want to save them? Yes, no. I'm just not going to save those, and we'll close that out as well. So where did I save it to? My jump drive. Here's the last thing. Your jump drives, if you ever plug them in, will look something like this icon. I just call that one Mr. Ivy. And I can double click and open it up. There's my Symbols Illustrator file. If I needed to upload this to Moodle, that Illustrator file is what I would upload once I'm finished. If you don't know, you can plug your jump drives in. There's two different places. First one is on the right-hand side behind your computer. There's a row of USB ports. Also, on the left-hand side back of your keyboard, there's a USB port on the left-hand side. That's two different places. Here's the important thing about jump drives. Here's how to eject a jump drive. I've got the Mr. Ivy file. If I go down to my dock, at the very far right-hand side, you see the trash can? I'm going to drag my jump drive down to the trash can. It's actually going to change. There's the eject. It says trash. Once it disappears, I can safely remove my jump drive. I'm still using it for one thing, so I'm going to force eject it. If I don't do this, it'll give me an error saying that's done. Once it's gone, I can safely remove my jump drive from the back and go from there. Pretty cool? Questions so far? I want to give you all plenty of time to work on this first project. I'm going to stop recording.